everybody, and welcome to another ASMR video here on the channel. As you can tell in this evening's video, we're diving back into some conspiracy theories. Well, I shouldn't really go plural with that, because we're just going to be looking at one in particular this evening. It's one that is, I think, a pretty infamous, very well known conspiracy theory. We love alien related content here on the channel, so tonight's video is no different, and we are going to be looking at the Roswell incident. So get comfy, get relaxed, and let's enjoy a good old conspiracy theory. So, the Roswell incident is the subject of a conspiracy theory which alleges that United States Army Air Forces balloon debris recovered in 1947 near Roswell, New Mexico, was actually a crashed extraterrestrial spacecraft operated from the nearby Alamogordo Army Airfield and part of the top-secret Project Mogul. The balloon was intended to detect Soviet nuclear tests. After metallic and rubber debris were recovered by Roswell Army Airfield personnel, the United States Army announced their possession of a flying disc. This announcement made international headlines, but was retracted within a day. To obscure the purpose and source of the debris, the Army reported that it was a conventional weather balloon. In 1978, retired Air Force officer Jesse Marcel revealed that the Army's weather balloon claim had been a cover story, and speculated that the debris was of extraterrestrial origin. Popularized by the 1980 book The Roswell Incident, this speculation became the basis for long-lasting and increasingly complex and contradictory UFO conspiracy theories, which over time expanded the incident to include governments concealing evidence of extraterrestrial beings, grey aliens, multiple crashed flying saucers, alien corpses, and autopsies, and the reverse engineering of extraterrestrial technology, none of which have any factual basis, apparently. In the 1990s, the US Air Force published multiple reports which established that the incident was related to Project Mogul and not debris from a UFO. Despite this, many UFO proponents still claim that the Roswell debris was in fact derived from an alien aircraft, and accuse the US government of a cover-up. The conspiracy narrative has become a trope in science fiction, literature, film and television. The town of Roswell promotes itself as a destination for UFO-associated tourism. So, let's have a little look at the actual crash back in 1947. So, by 1947, the US had launched thousands of top-secret Project Mogul balloons carrying devices to listen for Soviet atomic tests. On June 4th, researchers at Alamogordo Army Airfield in New Mexico launched a long train of these balloons. They lost contact with them, and balloon subsequently crashed. Later that month, Brazil discovered tinfoil, rubber, tape and thin wooden beams scattered across several acres of his ranch. With no phone or radio, Brazil was initially unaware of the ongoing flying disc craze. Amid the first summer of the Cold War, press nationwide covered Kenneth Arnold's account of what became known as flying saucers, objects that allegedly performed maneuvers beyond the capabilities of any known aircraft. Coverage of Arnold's report preceded a wave of over 800 similar sightings. When Brazil visited Corona on July 5th, his uncle Hollis Wilson suggested his debris could be from a flying disc. Hundreds of reports had been made during the 4th of July weekend. Newspapers speculated on a possible Soviet origin, and about $3,000, equivalent to $42,000 in 2024, was offered for physical proof. The next day, Brazil drove to Roswell, New Mexico, and informed Sheriff George Wilcox of the debris he had found. Wilcox calls Roswell Army Airfield RAAF. RAAF was home to the 509th Bomb Group of the 8th Air Force, the only unit at the time capable of delivering nuclear weapons. The base assigned Major Jesse Marcel and Captain Sheridan Cavett to return with Brazil and gather the material from the ranch. RAAF Base Commander Colonel William Blanchard notified the 8th Air Force Commanding Officer Roger M. Ramey of their findings. On July 8th, RAAF Public Information Officer Walter Holt issued a press release stating that the military had recovered a flying disc near Roswell. Robert Porter, an RAAF flight engineer, was part of the crew who loaded what he was told was a flying saucer onto the flight bound for Fort Worth Army Airfield in Texas. He described the material, packaged in wrapping paper when he received it, as lightweight and not too large to fit inside the trunk of a car. After station director George Walsh broke the news over Roswell radio station KSWS and relayed it to the Associated Press, his phone lines were overwhelmed. He later recalled, "All afternoon I tried to call Sheriff Wilcox for more information, but could never get through to him. Media people called me from all over the world." The press release issued by Holt read, "The many rumours regarding the flying disc became a reality yesterday when the intelligence office of the 509th Bomb Group was fortunate enough to gain possession of a disc through the cooperation of one of the local ranchers and the sheriff's office of Chavez County. The flying object landed on a ranch near Roswell sometime last week. Not having phone facilities, the rancher stored the disc until such time as he was able to contact the sheriff's office, who in turn notified Major Jesse A. Marcel of the 509th Bomb Group. Media interest in the case dissipated soon after a press conference where General Roger Ramey, his Chief of Staff Colonel Thomas Dubose, and Weather Officer Irving Newton identified the material as pieces of a weather balloon. Newton told reporters that similar radar targets were used at about 80 weather stations across the country. The small number of subsequent news stories offered mundane and prosaic accounts of the crash. On July 9th, the Roswell Daily Record highlighted that no engine or metal Brazil told the Record that the debris consisted of rubber strips, tinfoil paper, tape, and sticks. Brazil said he had paid little attention to it, but returned later with his wife and daughter to gather up some of the debris. Despite later claims that he was forced to repeat a cover story, Brazil told newspaper reporters, "I am sure that what I found was not any weather observation balloon." When interviewed in Fort Worth, Texas, Jesse Marcel described the wreckage as parts of the weather device, composed of tinfoil and broken wooden beams. A portion of the material was flown from Texas to Wright Field in Ohio, where Colonel Marcellus Duffy identified it as balloon equipment. Duffy had previous experience with Project Mogul and contacted Mogul's project officer Albert Drukowski to discuss the debris. Unable to disclose details about the project, Duffy identified it as meteorological equipment. The 1947 official account omitted any connection to Cold War military programs. On July 10th, military personnel at Alamogordo gave a demonstration to the press. 4 officers provided a false account of mundane weather balloon usage through the previous year. They demonstrated balloon configurations used by the Mogul team as ways to gather meteorological data, offering a plausible explanation for any unusual aspects of the Roswell debris. The Air Force later described the weather balloon story as an attempt to deflect attention from the top-secret Mogul project. So, we have UFO conspiracy theories now. The 1947 debris retrieval remained relatively obscure for 3 decades. Reporting ceased soon after the government provided a mundane explanation, and broader reporting on flying saucers declined rapidly after the Twin Falls saucer hoax. Just days after stories of the Roswell flying disc, a widely reported crash disc from Twin Falls, Idaho, was found to be a hoax created by 4 teenagers using parts from a jukebox. Nevertheless, belief in UFO cover-ups by the US government became widespread in this period. Hoaxes, legends, and stories of crashed spaceships and alien bodies in New Mexico emerged that later formed elements of the Roswell myth. In 1947, many Americans attributed flying saucers to unknown military aircraft. In the decades between the initial debris recovery and the emergence of Roswell theories, flying saucers became synonymous with alien spacecraft. After the assassination of JFK and the Watergate scandal, trust in the US government declined, and acceptance of conspiracy theories became widespread. UFO believers accused the government of a cosmic Watergate. The 1947 incident was reinterpreted to fit the public's increasingly conspiracy-minded outlook. So, first up we have the Aztec crashed saucer hoax. The Aztec, New Mexico crash saucer hoax in 1948 introduced stories of recovered alien bodies that later became associated with Roswell. It achieved broad exposure when the con artists behind it convinced Variety columnist Frank Scully to cover their fictitious crash. The hoax narrative included small grey humanoid bodies, metal stronger than any found on Earth, indecipherable writing, and a government cover-up to prevent public panic. These elements appeared in later versions of the Roswell myth. In retellings, the mundane debris reported the actual crash site was replaced with the Aztec hoax's fantastical alloys. By the time Roswell returned to media attention, X-ray aliens had become a part of American culture through the Barney and Betty Hill incident. In a 1997 Roswell report, Air Force investigator James McAndrew wrote that even with the exposure of this obvious fraud, the Aztec story is still revered by UFO theorists. Elements of this story occasionally re-emerge and are thought to be the catalyst for other crashed flying saucer stories, including the Roswell incident. That brings us on to Hangar 18. Hangar 18 is a non-existent location that many later conspiracy theories allege housed extraterrestrial craft or bodies recovered from Roswell. The idea of alien corpses from a crashed ship being stored in an Air Force morgue at the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base was mentioned in Scully's Behind the Flying Saucers, expanded in the 1966 book Incident at Exeter, and became the basis for a 1968 science fiction novel, The Vortex Conspiracy. Vortex was about a fictional cover-up by the Air Force unit charged with reverse engineering other nations' technical advancements. In 1974, science fiction author and conspiracy theorist Robert Spencer Carr alleged that alien bodies recovered from the Aztec crash were stored in Hangar 18 at Wright-Patterson. Carr claimed that his sources had witnessed the alien autopsy, another idea later incorporated into the Roswell narrative. The Air Force explained that no Hangar 18 existed at the base, noting a similarity between Carr's story and the fictional Vortex Conspiracy. The 1980 film Hangar 18, which dramatized Carr's claims, was described as a modern-day dramatization of Roswell by the film's director James Conway. Decades later, Carr's son recalled that he had often mortified my mother and me by spinning preposterous stories in front of strangers, tales of befriending a giant alligator in the Florida swamps, and sharing complex philosophical ideas with porpoises in the Gulf of Mexico. So we're now going to take a look at some of the specific conspiracy theories and works about Roswell itself. And I'm not going to bother with the debunking or explanations because I always feel that kind of ruins the fun. So, interest in Roswell was rekindled after ufologist Stanton Friedman interviewed Jesse Marcel in 1978. Marcel had accompanied the Roswell debris from the ranch to the Fort Worth press conference. In the 1978 interview, Marcel stated that the weather balloon explanation from the press conference was a cover story, and that he now believed the debris was extraterrestrial. So, we have the Roswell incident. The first Roswell conspiracy book released in October 1980 was The Roswell Incident by Charles Berlitz and Bill Moore. Anthropologist Charles Ziegler described the 1980 book as version 1 of the Roswell myth. Berlitz and Moore's narrative was the dominant version of the Roswell conspiracy during the 1980s. See, this book argues that an extraterrestrial craft was flying over the New Mexico desert to observe nuclear weapons activity when a lightning strike killed the alien crew. It alleges that after recovering the crashed alien technology, the US government engaged in a cover-up to prevent mass panic. The Roswell incident quoted Marcel's later description of the debris as nothing made on this earth. The book claims that in some photographs the debris recovered by Marcel had been substituted with the debris from a weather device, despite no visible differences in the photographed material. The book's claims of unusual debris were contradicted by the mundane details provided by Captain Sheridan Gavitt, who had gathered the material with Marcel. The Roswell incident book introduced alien bodies via the second-hand legends of deceased civil engineer Grady Barnett, purportedly found by archaeologists on the plains of San Agustin. The authors claim to have interviewed over 90 witnesses, though the testimony of only 25 appears in the book. Only 7 of them claim to have seen the debris. Of these, 5 claim to have handled it. Some elements of the witness accounts, small alien bodies, indestructible metals, hieroglyphic writing, matched other crashed saucer legends more than the 1947 reports from Roswell. Berlitz and Moore claim Scully's long-discredited crashed saucer hoax to be an account of the Roswell incident that mistakenly placed the area of the crash near Aztec. Mac Brazel died in 1963 before interest in the Roswell debris was revived. Berlitz and Moore interviewed his surviving adult children, William Brazel Jr. and Bessie Brazel Schreiber. Brazel Jr. described how the military arrested his father and swore him to secrecy. However, during the time that Mac Brazel was alleged to have been in military custody, multiple people reported seeing him in Roswell, and he provided an interview to local radio station KGFL. Schreiber, who had gathered debris material with her father when she was 14, offered ufologists a description that matched the materials used by Project Mogul. There was what appeared to be pieces of heavily waxed paper and sort of aluminium-like foil. Some of the metal foil pieces had a sort of tape stuck to them, and when they were held up to the light they showed what looked like pastel flowers. According to the book, some of the most important testimony was given by Marcel, the former intelligence officer who had gathered the debris in 1947 and claimed to have been part of a cover-up. The broader UFO media treated Marcel as a whistleblower. Independent researchers found embellishment in Jesse Marcel's accounts, including false statements about his military career and educational background. Next up, we've got the role of Glenn Dennis. The initial claims of recovered alien bodies came from the second-hand accounts of Barney Barnett and Pappy Henderson after their deaths. On August 5th, 1989, Friedman interviewed former mortician Glenn Dennis. Dennis provided an account of extraterrestrial corpses endorsed by prominent Roswell ufologists Don Berliner, Friedman, Randall, and Schmidt. Dennis claimed to have received 4 or 5 calls from the airbase, with questions about body preservation and inquiries about small or hermetically sealed caskets. He further claimed that a local nurse told him she had witnessed an alien autopsy. Glenn Dennis has been called the star witness of the Roswell incident. I just realised I've been moving ear to ear, and I don't think I've turned on the binaural setting on my recording device on my laptop, so that's not ideal. Apologies. On September 20th, 1989, an episode of Unsolved Mysteries included the second-hand stories of alien bodies captured by the army and transported to Texas. The episode was watched by 28 million people. In 1994, Dennis's account was portrayed by Unsolved Mysteries and dramatized in the made-for-TV movie Roswell. Dennis appeared in multiple books and documentaries. In 1991, Dennis co-founded a UFO museum in Roswell along with Max Liddell and former RAAF Public Affairs Officer Walter Haut. Dennis provided false names for the nurse who allegedly witnessed the autopsy, presented with evidence that a Naomi Self or Naomi Maria Self had never worked as a military nurse in 1947. Dennis admitted to fabricating her name. He claimed the nurse's actual name was Naomi Sipes. When no records were found for a Naomi Sipes, Dennis admitted to fabricating this name as well. UFO researcher Carl Flock observed that Dennis's story sounds like a B-grade thriller conceived by Oliver Stone. Scientific skeptic author Brian Dunning said that Dennis cannot be regarded as a reliable witness, considering that he had seemingly waited over 40 years before he started recounting a series of unconnected events. Such events, Dunning argues, were then arbitrarily joined to form what has become the most popular narrative of the alleged alien crash. Prominent UFO researchers, including Flock and Randall, have become convinced that no bodies were recovered from the Roswell crash. Further work was UFO Crash at Roswell. In 1991, Kevin Randall and Donald Schmidt published UFO Crash at Roswell. It sold 160,000 copies and served as the basis for the 1994 television film Roswell. Randall and Schmidt added testimony from 100 new witnesses. Though hundreds of people were interviewed by various researchers, only a few claimed to have seen debris or aliens. According to Flock, of the 300 plus individuals reportedly interviewed for UFO Crash at Roswell, only 23 could be reasonably thought to have seen physical evidence, debris. Of these, only 7 asserted anything suggestive of otherworldly origins for the debris. We now have a crash at Corona. In 1992, Stanton Friedman released Crash at Corona, co-authored with Don Berliner. The book introduced even more new witnesses and added to the narrative by doubling the number of flying saucers to 2, and the number of aliens to 8, 2 of which were said to have survived and been taken into custody by the government. Friedman interviewed Lydia Sleppy, the teletype operator who years earlier had said that she was ordered not to transmit a crashed saucer story. Friedman attributed Sleppy's account to FBI usage of an alleged nationwide surveillance system that he believed was put in place following an earlier crash. However, no evidence was found that the FBI had ever monitored any transmissions from her radio. Friedman's description of her typing as interrupted by an FBI message and Moore's claim that the machine suddenly stopped itself were found to be impossible for the teletype model that Sleppy operated back in 1947. And finally, we have The Truth About the UFO Crash at Roswell. This was authored by Randall and Schmidt again, which claimed a cargo plane delivered alien bodies to Dwight Eisenhower. The book abandoned the Barnett crash site on the plains of St. Augustine as lacking evidence and contradicting its framework of the Roswell event. Randall and Schmidt proposed a new crash site 35 miles north of Roswell, based on statements from Jim Ragsdale and Frank Kaufman. The book hid Kaufman's identity behind the pseudonym Steve Mackenzie, but Kaufman appeared in the 1995 British television documentary The Roswell Incident, using his real name. Kaufman claimed he monitored a UFO's path on radar and recovered debris from a crashed spaceship similar in shape to an F-117 stealth fighter. Kaufman Corfman's statements did not match the personnel at the base, his service record, the radar technology available, or the known topography of the proposed crash sites. Jim Ragsdale claimed that while driving home along Highway 285 with his girlfriend Trudy Truelove, great name, they watched a craft that was narrow with a bat-like wing crash. A later interview with Ragsdale clarified that his alleged crash site was nowhere near the purported Barnett or Corfman sites. In further interviews, Ragsdale's story grew to include bizarre details such as Ragsdale and Truelove removing 11 golden helmets from the alien craft to bury in the desert. And that is that. I mean, it's obviously not true, is it? Well, maybe. If we're talking probabilities, there's maybe a 0.001% chance it's true. But realistically, probably not. It's mighty convenient, isn't it, that all these magical witnesses decide to actually tell their story years down the line. Or maybe it's their NDAs expiring. It's just silly, but it is still a great deal of fun to go through, and hey, who knows, maybe an alien ship did really crash there. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. But that is going to do it for tonight's video. Everybody, I really hope you did enjoy it. As always, leave requests for conspiracy theories you would like to see covered here on the channel. But that is going to do it for tonight, so if you did enjoy this video and you are able to, then please do give it a like and subscribe if you're new. And until the next video, everybody,